There we go. Sorry about that. My fault. Okay, we call this December 5th, 2024 meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee to order. It is 1:05. Thank you everyone for being here. We have a good crowd today, so appreciate it. Aaron, would you do the roll call for us?
Of course. Taylor Keegan. Amy, are you online?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, you're very quiet. We can't hear you. Brian Lynn.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Awesome. We can hear you now. Thank you, sir. Brian Lynn Mood.
Present.
Thank you. And we have a new member of our Technical Advisory Committee. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Murad. I'm the air quality specialist for the environmental health services. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Murad, for joining us. Steve Rebuffo.
Present.
Thank you. Sean Baskey for Luke Boland.
Here.
Then we have Ben White.
Here.
Brad Coy.
Here.
Melinda Kohlhaas.
Here.
Bart Rudolph. Hey, Bart, he's going to make us miss our perfect attendance. Elise Babb.
Present.
Thank you. Everybody's here except for Bart, and you have quorum.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Would you also please do the public involvement announcement?
Of course, AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. First, business items are presented by a staff or consultant. Then the committee is given an opportunity to discuss that item. After the committee discusses the business item, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes, and we'll be timing you to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute the microphone, press *6. I did have one other thing I need to mention as part of the beginning.
Okay, go for it.
So last TAC meeting was an adventure for everybody. There was a lot of back and forth and different type of things happening. We had multiple motions on a particular item. And I just wanted to kind of remind everybody that we are limited in what we can do in terms of motions. You can have more than one motion on an item over a period of time in your meeting. You can only have one on the floor at a time. If the first motion fails, you can have another motion that you bring forward. It has to be in the positive, and it has to be substantially different than the previous motion, or different enough so people know that you're not trying to game the system, basically. So just want to remind everybody that we need to be careful how we do motions moving forward, and also remind you that motions can be amended either through an official amendment or a friendly amendment any number of times during the meeting. You just have to go through the formal process to accept each amendment before you decide the final motion. So now that Lori's back, hopefully we'll be able to keep track of it a little bit better. I told you I would get a talking to from that last meeting, and I did. So thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, real quick, sorry. You all have a little cheat sheet in front of you. And this is, we will provide it at every meeting for you, so please don't take it home with you. We will update it as we can. It's to provide you just some guidance on how our meetings go for procedures. So, you know, call to order, public involvement, action items, how to do an action item, how to do amendments to the motion, and then how voting is done. So it's there just for some help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. The next thing before us is the approval of the agenda. Okay, moved by Mr. Lindemood. Do we have a second?
Yes, this is Yemi Alimi, a second.
Okay, second by Mr. Alimi. Are there any changes that are needed to the agenda?
I would like to propose moving marathon first.
First,
See,
you want
sorry,
to
first to
explain
from
what you mean by
item
that?
8, from item B, from item 6B to item 6A, so that we can hear their concerns first.
Okay, so the proposal, so you're moving an amendment? That's a motion,
Thank you.
right?
Yes, I would like to move to amend to move item 6B to item 6A.
Let's switch the order of those.
Move-
Okay,
Yeah,
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Fab, seconded by Ms. Kohlhaas to switch item 6A and 6B. Are there any questions on that or any comments? Okay, are there any objections to making that switch? If there are objections, we can do a roll call. If not, then just have that be amended. Any objections? Okay, hearing no objections, that amendment passes. So the agenda as amended is before us with swapping item 6A and 6B. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing no other changes, are there any objections to approving the amended agenda? Hearing no objections, the agenda is approved. Next, we have no meeting minutes, so we'll skip item 4, we'll move past 4 into the action items, item 5. And so the action items are the ones that we are taking action on versus 6, which are just project updates. And so first action item is item 5A, the AMATS Title 6 plan. Is that one that you'll present on?
No, it'll actually be Christine. I have a relaxed day today, so I'm excited.
Take it away, Christine.
Thank you. For you today is an update to our Title VI plan. The one current on our website is from 2012. Moving forward, we've been advised that we should update this plan yearly to refresh data, make sure that the federal regulations have changed, and check our safe harbor languages. So kind of in the memo, I have outlined what has changed of this plan, just to refresh our language if possible, expanded some explanations for the authorities and citations instead of just listing approval laws, and updating the demographic analysis and the machine complaint form. This will be an appendix in our public participation plan, which will be going to the public probably in February. So it will get to be reviewed and comments received at that time. And then moving forward, we'll probably update. So we're just asking for committee recommendation to approve it so that we can translate it into the safe harbor languages that are listed, so that when it goes out on the public review, we'll have all the stuff that we can see that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, this one's okay, go ahead.
First, compliments to AMAT staff. This is well written. You guys do such a good job in supporting AMAT's program, and all of the language being plain English. It was very easy to read, well organized. So I just want to express compliments to your efforts. I did have a question on the org structure about BPAC and the CAC and the Freight Advisory Committee. Are they indeed going through the TAC and they're not directly linked to the policy committee? That's okay. I just wasn't aware of that. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that confirmation. And then the other, I just have a couple other comments, if that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, on the framework policy statement that's signed by the PC chair, I just have a couple suggestions, and I don't think would make any fundamental difference if it didn't get included, but I was going to suggest that could be moved up front instead of embedded into the document, but just a suggestion. And there's some numbering issues. I think that's minor formatting that will get addressed. I know this is just a draft. I did have a comment on what is shown as page 5 on just one clarification for the sentence where it talks about it gives points to the projects. I would like to suggest that, maybe a preface of when scoring the projects, or just give it a little bit more context of why are we giving points to the projects. And I think that's all I had.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
so how would we incorporate these in? Either comments now? I know that we still need to have comments before, but should we be considering these sorts of changes as ones that would need to be.
Yeah, so these are
Motion.
just discussion right now. We have to do public comment first, public testimony on it, and then it comes back and you can make a motion to amend based on what's talked about here. So
So be considering how you might want to turn that into a motion to that point.
Okay.
Or an amendment to the motion. Okay, are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Are there, okay, moving on, are there any comments from the public?
One comment about the signatures, just for your consideration, is how it's put out right now is just the main page with everybody from the policy committee, and then that secondary legal description is down there. I've asked DOT if that's appropriate to have two signatures, and I said for emphasis that it is. We can look at putting it. But the first page will always be everybody's entire signature. And then there's actually a third place in
Oh,
the LAP, the limited English proficiency plan that's at the end of the Title VI. There is a third signature that the PC director signs. It's just for emphasis. That's the policy to learn.
That's helpful information.
very helpful.
Okay, are there any questions, anybody online that you see, Christine? I don't see anyone. And if I missed anything. Okay, so what is the will of the committee?
I move to recommend that the draft be edited for just make minor edits to the page numbering.
Maybe let's do the
Oh.
motion first.
Oh.
You recommend approval.
Oh, that's right.
And then we'll add those
Okay.
amendments.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, right. Okay, I motion to recommend to the policy committee the approval of the AMATS Title VI plan.
Okay, moved by Ms. Fullhouse, seconded by Ms. Babb. Yep. And now if you want to make those amendments.
Okay. I motion to amend the draft to ensure that pagination is corrected and consider changing that one sentence on page 5 to explain points given to projects.
And that page 5 is the second page 5 of the
Yeah.
definition, right? So that is the responsibilities of AMATS section. For the transportation. Am I looking at the right spot?
It's the second page 5.
Go back one.
Under responsibilities of AMATS, transportation plan.
We have a second.
Okay.
Okay, moved by Ms. Colhouse, seconded by Ms. Babb. To change the pages, the fix the pagination and add some context on that points. Is that clear enough? Okay, do we have any discussion on the amendment? Do we have any objections to the amendment? Okay, hearing none, that amendment is now part of the motion. Are there any other amendments requested for the amended motion? Public has already had a chance to comment, so.
It's shot by.
So apologize. At the end of the meeting, if you do want to state what your comments are, and it does go before the policy committee in 2 weeks where they will actually officially adopt it. So we're just recommending it. And you can, at the end of the meeting, provide some comments or the policy committee has another opportunity. Are there any other amendments to the motion? Okay, are there any objections to approving the motion as amended? Okay, hearing none, that motion as amended has passed. We're now moving on to the next action item. Item 5B, the AMATS Household Travel Survey. That one, Christine. as well?
Christine as well.
Okay,
And then we have, for presentation. So this is, household travel survey every 10 years ago. And that's put out one of these so that we can collect data on travel habits within the region. And it's kind of a robust survey, so if you're specifically valid, we'll gather information from. And Bobby, if you were on, you'd like to share your screen and get the presentation, I would like to do that. I'll him a minute ago, I don't think I hear you.
Bobby, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Yep. I think
There we go.
Alana's, yep.
I hear you. Would you like to share your screen?
Yep.
Great, we can see it.
Okay. All right. I'm Bobby Wortman. I'm a consultant at our senior consultant at RSG, and am the project manager on the household travel survey for the Anchorage region. And I am joined today by our deputy project manager on the project, Alana Reagan. And so we're coming to the committee to introduce the project, and we also will have a series of discussion items to get feedback directly from the TAC and then the PC when we meet with them in the next week or so. So I'll hand it over to Alana to start the presentation, and then I'll lead us through the set of discussion items.
Thank you. So I will begin with some context around what is a household travel survey. A household travel survey collects day-to-day travel information for residents in a given state or region. And as Christine said, this type of survey was last conducted in Anchorage in 2014, about 10 years ago. Residents will provide demographic information, typical travel details, and a full travel log for at least 1 day and up to 7 days. This data is then used to inform travel demand models and transportation investments in the coming years. And we will be using address-based sampling to ensure a representative and random sample of the region that will later be weighted to be used in analysis. An overview of the multi-phase study design that we will be using. First, respondents will receive their initial invitation by mail with the option to participate online by calling with their phone to a call center or by downloading a smartphone app called OurMove. Respondents will then complete their sign-up survey and provide basic demographic and household composition details. They are then assigned a travel period in the near future. After or during this travel period, respondents will provide details about the trips that they make, including travel modes or trip purposes for each trip that they take. They will also answer various questions each day about their typical travel behavior. And this is where we have an opportunity to add 1 or 2 attitudinal and policy level questions to the survey. And then as a note, what do participants get for participating? As an incentive, we will be offering respondents a gift certificate between $10 and $30, depending on which mode they participate with, and depending on how many members are in their household for survey burden. A couple of examples of the survey instrument, you can see OurMove for Web on the left, where you can log in through your PC or laptop to complete the travel diary online. Alternatively, participants could download the OurMove smartphone app shown on the right in 3 example screenshots, where the app will automatically capture any trips that you take by tracking location. And then a quick overview of the project timeline. Survey programming will begin this month and continue through January of this coming year. We will then have a survey pretest in February through March of 2025. Survey fielding when these invitations will reach potential participants' mailboxes, and they will be assigned travel dates, will be in September through October of 2025. And then data delivery will be approximately in February of 2026. And you can also see the study logo that we will be going to field with on this slide as well. And so this survey programming that is happening in the next couple of months is why we are asking for discussion today about these potential policy level questions. Are there any questions about household travel surveys and the content I've reviewed so far before we move into a discussion?
Are there any questions? I think we're good. I think you can keep moving on to the discussion.
Oh, there's one question from Steve Ruffo.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Hi, thanks. And maybe this is the wrong time, and if it's the wrong time, let me know. I haven't lived here my whole life, but I've lived here long enough to know that there are going to be folks who won't be able to imagine why they weren't randomly selected to provide an input to this survey. How dare you not want their opinion? Could you tell us a little bit about the process you're going to use for the random selection? Because for this to make sense, it, no kidding, has to be random, and nobody else's input is going to be asked for except those that are selected to take the survey. So what's the process you're going to use to select the sample group?
Okay. Go ahead.
You're muted if you're trying to say something.
So we're going to use an address-based sample or an address-based selection sample. So what that basically means is that we have the United States Postal Service has the residential addresses for every person in the study region. So for the Anchorage Bowl area. And then we will randomly select within that address-based sample an appropriate amount of people, which is typically about half or up to half of the available households or addresses within a region. And then those participants will be asked to participate in the survey. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the United States Postal Certified Mail Delivery System, and if you have a active mailing address, then you're eligible to participate in the survey through random selection. And then the addresses are literally randomly selected for participation. And the scale of how many households we choose to sample out of the entire sample in the Anchorage Bowl region is essentially benchmarked to criteria that we use internally to get to the appropriate sample that we know we need at the end of the survey. So in general, what we typically like to have is about 1% or higher responses within a region. And so we know from other surveys that we've done nationally on this about how many households that takes, because not everyone's going to choose to participate.
So I think Christine has a comment. Go ahead, Christine.
Clarify, the region isn't just Anchorage, well, it's also if you go over into Chicago.
Yep.
And post office boxes as addresses count?
Lena, do you know if we count PO boxes? I think it had to be a residential address.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
I can double check on the specificity of that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just suggest, because you know you're going to get asked, to be very clear in whatever report comes out of this, how you created the sample that you used.
Yep. Yeah, my inclination is that the PO boxes are not used because there's no way to differentiate like a PO box for a business versus a residential address in the data that we get from the United States Postal Service. But we can confirm and follow up. But I agree, it has to be clear like who's eligible to participate, and we're after people who are residents.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for
Well-
your question, Steve. Are there any other questions from the committee? Go ahead, John.
So how is it going to be? Are there going to be accommodations for translation? I mean, we just got done with the Title VI plan. So I'm just interested in hearing how, if it's going to be, targeted at addresses all over the place, then you might not know what the accommodation might be.
Yep, so we're contracted to provide translation services for up to 5 languages. Alana, do you have the readout of the actual languages?
I believe it's the safe harbor languages, the
I think I can list them off, the
yeah,
Korean, Tagalog, Spanish, Hmong, and Sinhala.
yes.
And then those translation services will be provided by professional translation, so it's not like Google Translate. So the survey instrument, every single way that a respondent would interact with it will be professionally translated when they take the survey.
I think they're going to ask or participate. They can elect yes, and I want to do it in this language, and then that's how it will work.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Melinda.
Could you give us a sense of, since it is for a household, how did you prepare the questions so that we can hear how the different members in the household travel, whether that's school-age children versus different members of the household?
So every member of the household will be asked to participate in the survey. The exception will be for children less than 16 will have reported travel from the adult, for the guardian or the parent in the household. But anyone older than 16 will be asked to participate directly, so that their travel is recorded separately. So in general, when we do the surveys, there'll be a set of household level questions, so information about household specific specific attributes within the household, and then there is each individual person in the household. And each individual person will answer questions about themselves, and then they will participate individually in their travel for 1 to 7 days, depending on if they elect to do the 1-day R-Move for web or the 7-day R-Move on the smartphone application.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? So one thing I see here, Aaron, is it looks like this is halfway through the slides. We're still on presentation before we're like.
Yeah, we're not at the point where we're with questions to the public. We still have to get to the actual ask. We're just trying to get background so you know why we're asking these questions.
Okay, let's move on then and continue on with the discussion presentation.
Okay. Go to the next slide. So one thing to kind of prime the conversation is at the end of this survey, so there's a huge amount of effort that's going into understanding how people move about the region and why they move around the region. But there's always an opportunity at the end of this to ask a set of policy level questions, back to the community. And a lot of communities, a lot of regions will ask questions specifically around funding priorities because it's a representative survey effort as opposed to a planning process. So in planning process, we typically get a convenient sampled amount of responses back versus in a household travel survey, because it's done to a scientific degree of precision, we can be more confident on the level of representativeness of these regional policy questions. So there's an opportunity here to ask questions, to get feedback on, how the region should develop or where funding priorities should be. There's all sorts of different types of questions. And so I wanted to throw this slide up here just to talk briefly about the last MTP process that just wrapped up in the region. for the 2050 MTP and just some of the challenges and successes that we're seeing in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Go to the next slide. We have a set of 4 questions that we've worked with the AMATS planning staff to get your feedback from. The first question are on transportation budget priorities and deciding how to essentially where to invest in transportation funds. And so this question would ask the respondent to prioritize where they put the money. So how would they divide up the funds? So you can imagine a scenario where you have 100% of the total budget. Where do you put 20% of it, 10%, 5% of it? And so the categories for this one would be, for this question would be building new roads or making existing roads bigger, building or rebuilding roads, pathways, sidewalks to slower speeds, fixing and maintaining what we already have, adding public transit routes or on-demand services to cover more of the community, have buses arrive every 15 minutes on most routes, removing transit fares to encourage more people to use public transit, adding more regional biking and walking pathways, and adding more to neighborhoods for biking and walking. So the last 2 questions are more on a regional scale versus a neighborhood scale. And then the next question would be on walking and biking behavioral incentives, and to rank the most important factors that affect their comfortability with walking and biking as part of their daily travel. And then there's a set of questions in here on the distance to the destination, discontinuous roads, pathways, and sidewalks, temperature, weather, lighting, sidewalk pathway width, speed of cars around me, the quantity of cars around me, separation from traffic, the distance or the physical protection that is provided, and then winter maintenance. And then the next question is a behavioral incentives question. How supportive are you of policies that discourage driving alone, such as congestion pricing or parking fees? And this would just be a Likert scale asking for if they strongly oppose or strongly support with options in between. And then finally is a funding policy question again. Which of the following transportation projects would you pay additional taxes or fees for? And then to select all that apply. And these are the same categories as their first question. So or similar question. So building new roads or making existing roads bigger, building or rebuilding roads, pathways, and sidewalks to slow vehicle speeds, fixing and maintaining what we already have, adding public transit routes or on-demand services to cover more of the community, having buses arrive every 15 minutes on most routes, removing transit fares to encourage use of public transit, and adding more amenities adding more regional amenities for biking and walking, and adding more neighborhood amenities for biking and walking. And so we'll open up here a discussion to get the feedback from the committee. We'll also ask the policy committee for the same feedback. I think what's important to understand too about these regional policy questions, why can't we ask just all of the questions, is because of the concept in our surveys called respondent burden. And so respondent burden just essentially means the amount of effort that it takes to conduct and complete the survey from start to finish. And household travel surveys are extremely burdensome for people to do because we're asking for an entire day's worth of travel or an entire week's worth of travel. And so there's really only opportunity here to ask 1 or 2 questions. And whether it's 1 or 2 questions really depends on which question that we ask. So you can imagine that in the behavioral incentives, one to discourage or asking about congestion pricing or parking, and it's just a strongly opposed to strongly support, that type of question has less of a burden than potentially for a question that is the first question on budget priorities, where we're asking people to put some thought into how they would divide up the priorities out of 100%. So what percentage of a budget would you assign for all these? So this question, for example, would take a lot more thought and require more burden on the respondent than the question that is just asking if they oppose or what their degree of opposition or favor is for congestion pricing or parking fees. So that's what we'll kind of decide if it's 1 or 2 questions. If the question is low burden, then we can probably do 2 questions. But if it's something like this question where we need them to put more thought into how they would divide things up, then that would be a scenario where we could only ask 1 question. So the point here is what's the most important thing from a regional policy question that maximizes the use of the the scientific survey instrument. And we'll open up for discussion now.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the committee on this piece that we've gone over now? Okay,
I mean,
go ahead, Sean.
I guess just a general comment. Question number 2 feels very limited in the number of options. I feel like there's more out there.
So just listing congestion pricing or parking fees, you mean?
Yeah. I don't have a suggestion. Seems limited.
And so in terms of limited, in terms of the various different examples of policy that might discourage driving alone.
Right.
Okay. And so, and the limitness would be expanded to beyond a pricing question. So I think the intent with these 2 things is that you could implement different toll facilities or vary parking costs in downtown. Are you thinking of different pricing specific policies, or are you thinking more non-pricing type policies?
Probably non-pricing type policies, but if congestion pricing is intended to be tolls, that's a completely different discussion that, I don't know the viability of that within the context of our road systems, but
yeah. And I think this is potentially an opportunity here if the committees, want to focus on this behavioral incentives or a way to discourage driving alone, to maybe, this would be a situation where you could ask 2 questions, right? 1 question might be about a pricing, pricing impact, right? So something that is going to impact using the, dollars, right, to discourage you from doing it, versus one that would be, so you'd have one that is this question, and you'd have a second question that would be on the non-pricing ways that you could potentially discourage driving alone. Would that be more in line with your thoughts?
I don't have any specific way I'd want to go on it. It's just that that's probably not the best route to getting people to changing their choice of transportation.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
I think that.
And
yeah.
when it comes to toll roads, right? I mean, there's so much smarter people in the room that probably have experience with whether or not that's even viable or not. So even putting it on there is, I don't even, when it comes to FHWA, I don't think we can, so not on any of the NHS facilities or anything like that. So it's off the table already. So why include it in a survey?
Yeah, I think the overall goal is to explore, right, what there may or may not be tolerance for, right, in the region to support different policies and programs to discourage that. And so the intent of the survey would really just be to help AMATS and the tech and PC kind of understand where the population might be at on different programs policies, and whether those are fee-based or non-fee-based, would be part of the instrument design here, right? So I think the overall question is, is it more worthwhile for the tech and the PC to kind of focus on the behavioral incentives and dive into different types of behavioral incentives as opposed to, getting caught up in the exact way that we phrase the question? I think there's still room to rephrase those questions, but it's more of on the level of, is this the thing that we want to go and ask people to kind of respond back to in the region?
Okay, looks like we have another question, Ben.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the questions, and I like the funding ones myself, just because of where I'm at in the world, but I'm looking at like number 4, where we've got check all that apply. If there's a way that we can do this, but also establishing kind of a priority, because someone could come in here and check 3 or 4 of these, but we're not gonna know which one is a higher priority than another. And so I'm not sure if you guys have that thought process of, coming up with sort of a heat map of, if I check 4 of these, which one of those 4 was, A, B, or C?
Yeah, I think the first question, so it's the same categories,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
this question, I think, gets at exactly what you're saying, because what this allows them to do is say, let's just say that, we give them 100 units, right? And that could be
Yep.
$100, that could be a percentage, whatever unit of measurement we want to use. And they can decide that they would put 100% of it into fixing and maintaining what we already have. And then someone else might, say, I want, 50% to be into capacity expansion projects, which would be that first line item. And then they can distribute how they see fit. And I think that would give the priority, or at least that's what I'm hearing from you, is that this question would give that priority aspect to it. So if someone said, I only care about fixing and maintaining what we already have, and I don't care about anything else, so to give them the ability to say that, and that would be reflected in the survey. Versus it would also allow people to just kind of put where it would allow them to decide how they wanted to rank these. And then it will give you the scale of that, right, as well.
Would both of the questions be included, or because we're looking at a limited number of questions, would it be only one?
If we go with this question, because of the amount of just thought that has to go into it, it would be one question for here. If it's this, so it would be a funding policy question, and it would be the have them rank them. And I think that would essentially be the case too. So for example, if we go with the last question, which is having them rank order them, or select all that apply, that would be the same thing. So there's a lot more thought involved in this one, and there's more funding priority or funding categories. And we might have to think too about how we specifically phrase some of these so that it's clear, what these kind of line up to. But I think the first question and the last question would end up being one question.
Okay, it looks like Steve, I see you got your hand raised.
Yeah, just another comment, maybe suggestion. I kind of like these kinds of questions myself, and don't have a problem with spending a little extra time answering them. But I know that it's a challenge with these things to come up with a list that is referred to as mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, that you've covered all the options that are out there. Because somebody who's taking this thing is going to say, boy, I wish X was on the list and I don't see it. Is there room to put in a space for an other? And let somebody who thinks there's a priority or a consideration that needs to happen that wasn't on the list to suggest it.
There is the option to do that. I think, actually, Alana, do we have the option to add in a writing response here with our move? So we are limited a little bit on what the app can actually do. So I want to get that clarity first.
We could have an option that says other and then have a follow-up open-ended answer, question and
Okay.
answer.
Right. So what would be important with the other, what is to consider with that other category is that, these are kind of, these get lined up to kind of to technical things, right? And planning and engineering. And so what would end up happening is that if you put in the other category before that data can really be collated, somebody at AMATS would need to go through those other categories and determine if those really are part of another category that was already asked and then recode those, or whether or not they belong in its own category. And then from there, what will happen too is that you can imagine a situation where, you know, 100 people say kind of the same, it's the same thing, but they word it in slightly different ways. And so there'll be some amount of effort there to categorize the others into groupings. So what it really comes down to is any type of bias that would be introduced into that process, because someone's going to have to interpret what they thought, and then the amount of effort there just to get the data into a format that it can be collated and presented.
Go ahead, Brian.
How many respondents are we expecting? I mean, I know they're gonna send out so many questionnaires and there's a standard amount of response that you would percentage therein that you expect to actually respond. At the end of the day, do we know what those numbers are and how many surveys they're expecting to collect?
Were you saying 1% is what you were hoping? 1% of
Yeah.
households?
1% of how many houses?
1% is typically what we consider in the industry to be the benchmark standard. I can get a readout of how many households we're anticipating to collect. And I want to give you
It's like 1,000.
It's over 1,000. Yeah. Over 1,000 households. I think I want to say it's like 1,400, but I don't want to be quoted on that.
I'm just trying to get a sense of,
Yeah.
you know, half of them have an other, how much
Yeah.
data.
Maybe the question would be for AMAT staff, having an other and having that opportunity to see what that is. Given that we use this for our AMAT, our MTP and quite a bit of the other work that we're doing for understanding travel, is that something that is helpful to have, or would that be maybe, I don't know, what do you think on that idea of having other information?
For the sake of keeping us moving forward as we're running out of time quickly, yes, it'll be helpful. Let's do it.
Okay. Sounds good. Did you have something else?
I had a really quick comment. It just seems like the questions, if we're only choosing one or two, that they're doing a lot of work. And it would be nice to have two, one that talks about priorities and budgetary priorities and the tolerance for fees. And I think that could be the first one if it were to be just a drag and rank rather than having to think about percentages. And it's similar to, in some ways, to the how supportive are you of policies, strongly opposed question, and then the funding policy question. So all three of those seem like they could be combined. And then the one that is very different from those that I think would also be useful to the committees would be the ranking the most important factors that affect your comfortability question. So if I were to choose two, it would be the first in our agenda. I'm sorry, it doesn't quite align with the presentation, but the 100, imagine control 100% of the transportation budget, and then the comfortability, walking as part of your daily travel. Those are the two that I am adopting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Teresa. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Go ahead if you'd state your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
I would just suggest looking at the customer review surveys that are done by businesses, because they're simple and they're already known quantities for most of us. You know, That would be one part. So more 1 to 4, and less percentages. Possibility. And the other one is all those surveys would have the option, right, whatever specific concern is, somehow they can sort of know businesses, I don't know. My question had more to do with there are languages that these will be translated in or made available. And by percentage from the groups that's listed on page 23, I think. I'm just wondering, out of the Alaskan Native languages that I'm aware of, the most common ones that's commonly spoken first language for thousands of residents, I think in the area. So I'm just wondering why or if or predominant Alaskan Native language, predominant Alaskan Native language could not be included on the list. I just don't know why we have 0.3% language estimates for percentages for native speakers.
Okay, thank you for the comment. That might be something that Christine could look into and follow up on afterwards. So thanks for the comment. Are there any other comments from the public?
You have somebody online?
Okay, go ahead. Looks like Jason.
Yeah, hello, Jason Norris. I just wanted to encourage a scrub of the language. It seems like a couple of these are phrased in a way that would create an instant negative bias on the part of drivers in a way that may be detrimental. For instance, in the funding policy one, are we rebuilding roads, pathways, and sidewalks necessarily to slow vehicle speeds, or are we doing it because it would make it more attractive for active transportation users? If you phrase it that way, then people who primarily drive are going to see that as a threat to them getting where they want to go. Another one is, how supportive are you of policies that discourage driving alone? That immediately puts people on the defensive. It could be phrased as encouraging carpooling or something. Also not entirely sure how parking fees would discourage that or encourage carpooling as opposed to maybe something like tolls. And I know congestion pricing and tolls are pretty close. But yeah, just giving these a good scrub so that you don't create a negative bias in the driving public toward active transportation would be encouraged. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Are there any other public comments? Okay.
This is Zach. I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Go ahead, Zach. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we don't have any congestion in Anchorage, so I don't know that it makes sense to ask about congestion pricing. And obviously, we don't want to discourage people from being downtown. So maybe there's just a better way to phrase that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There's one in the chat.
Okay, would you like to read it for us?
Sure. Brandon Telford said on the funding question, you should consider adding an option for assigning more space within right of ways for snow storage to increase efficiency of winter maintenance.
Okay, perfect. Any other public comments?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
On the.
If you'll state your name.
Yeah, Chuck Koff,
Okay.
Anchorage, Alaska.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir. On the previous slide, questions asked of the public about trails, what's important. I think there was a question about lighting and different things. I didn't really see there anything of perception of safety for users of the trail. How important is it to you that you feel safe? Or your perception perceived or real on trail use. I think that's a real important, because I think crime and violence on our trails is a real human safety. Again, they'll need to have dedicated bike patrols. MPD is short-handed. It is a real problem, and I think when we're looking at possibly building out new projects, we should ask people how important it is for them that the safety issues are addressed. The current projects, we're incorporating that into them.
Okay, thank you.
I may have missed it, but I didn't see anything related to safety perceived or.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll move now into what is the will of the committee. And I guess what we're looking for here to recommend, let's see, recommend approval of or edits to up to 2 of the questions provided to provide to the policy committee. So we're recommending approval to the policy committee and maybe selecting 2 that we would like to suggest that they consider.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to recommend for approval inclusion of 2 questions. Question number 1, with the addition of it being ranked. And question,
The addition or the changing it so that it's ranked?
changing it so that it's ranked. I liked your drag and drop. We need to be aware of the survey budgetary effort that it takes for surveyors. And then, let's see, so that has an idea of factoring funding and prioritization without it being specifically funding. And then inclusion of number 3 with the addition of adding the word comfortability and safety for walking, biking as part of your daily travel.
Okay, moved by Ms. Koha, second by Mrs. Fab, to recommend, as they said, I'm not gonna repeat it, because I think you did a good job. Do we have any discussion or amendments?
I've got 2 amendments.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
First one is, I believe that one of the languages need to be made available as you pick. I mean, the bottom line is we can't ignore the people that were here before us.
Okay,
And so I'd like to move, that's one of the added.
you want to do it as a separate motion from the other motion?
Well, it's
Or an amendment, I
an
mean?
amendment to this motion.
Okay. Do we have a second for adding Ubik? Second for adding Ubik? Do we have any opposed to this amendment? Okay, hearing none, that's been added as an amendment. That's, yeah, the motion's been amended with the Ubik.
Second, I'd like to amend to add an other box. Both questions.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Lindenwood, seconded by Ms. Keegan to add an other box. Are there any opposed to that motion, to that amendment? Okay, hearing none, that amendment is also adopted unanimously. Are there any other amendments? Go ahead, Sean.
I'll move to add Brandon's to the first question.
Here's some language that I put together for that.
Sounds good.
Reallocating space within the right of way for more snow storage to increase efficiency of winter maintenance. Sound good?
Did you get a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Basky, second by Mr. White to add the bullet as I read it out. Do we have any, are there any opposed to that amendment? Okay, hearing none, that amendment passes as well. So, go ahead, Sean.
Sure. As was recommended by the public, I think we had a comment on general scrub of language administratively to, to not have any bias. AMATS staff to take that on instead of us trying to doctor a ton of language.
Okay, so we have a motion to review the language and remove bias, considered for bias. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so seconded by Ms. Keegan, moved by Mr. Basky. Do we have any opposed to that amendment? Okay, that one passes too. Go ahead.
I'd like to make an amendment too, is that to that number 3 question, we add a box in there for none of the above. In case someone doesn't have anything in there. I mean, if we're gonna add another, we add a none of the above.
I think that's to the first.
Or the first,
To the first or third question?
The first question.
Okay.
Sorry, got my number off.
That's all right.
I know we have members of the public that would not want to pay anything for.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Wyatt, second by Mr. Bansky to add a box to the first question that is none of the above. Do we have are any opposed to that amendment? Okay, that amendment passes as well. Are there any other amendments? Okay, I think we're rocking it. So let's move on to the motion as amended. Unless there's any other, I guess, yeah, unless. Is anyone opposed to approving the motion as amended? Okay, hearing none, that motion as amended has passed. So thank you so much for the presentation. And let's move now to item 5C, the Highway Safety Improvement Program Letter of Support.
Okay, that'll be me, everybody. I can share my screen. Yeah, well, okay, so as you may remember, back in June, we had a work session regarding the Highway Safety Improvement Program, projects that are listed in the tip, as well as what DOT is working on. And during that time, we were given the opportunity as AMATS to provide nominations for the upcoming HSIP round, which we greatly appreciate. So AMATS did provide 2 nominations. Department of Transportation Central Region also provided some recommendations, nominations for HSIP projects. Those were initially reviewed by DOT headquarters, and there was some additional questions they had, as well as asking if there are letters of support that can be written from Municipality of Anchorage, AMATS, and others to help move these projects forward and give them more weighting. So before you today is a letter of support with the 9 projects that were nominated as part of this HSIP process. These are just projects within the AMATS area. So just keep that in mind as you go forward. This is not everything possible. This is just what we have purview as AMATS, by and large. So I'm going to go through the projects pretty quickly. I want to keep us on time as much as possible because we do have a couple of informational items to get to. So bear with me as I speed through it. First one is on the Seward Highway. It's the safety corridor variable speed limit from milepost 90 to 118. So for those who are not familiar with the area, that is roughly from, sorry, Melinda, thank you. Roughly from Girdwood up to the Rabbit Creek interchange. So I think it's a little outside of Girdwood, but close to that, along the safety corridor in that area. So variable speed limits are making changes to the speed limits, as you see here from FHWA. Typically, they're done by an electronic sign. You know, it looks like we'll probably do electronic signs along the Seward Highway here. So they can be changed based on weather conditions, based on if there's congestion or crashes in the area or whatever. It helps to slow people down if something comes up. And it's one of the safety factors, one of the safety benefits that is pushed by the Safe Systems for All approach that we as AMATS and FHWA and Alaska DOT are doing. So this is a pretty relatively simple project, honestly, to be able to help with that. Next one we have, get back to my screen, is Mountain View Road improvements. So this is actually one of the ones that AMATS nominated. So we're really happy to see this one on here. It is Mountain View Road from, what is the name of that one? I'm trying to zoom in so you can all see it where it is. Shad Street to Davis Park. So it's actually a pretty lengthy, I think it's almost the entire length of Mountain View minus a small portion over by Boniface Parkway. So this one was nominated for improvements in the area. This is one that we actually went out as part of AMAT staff, DOT staff, and municipal staff and looked at the area and saw that there were some areas of improvement that can be done. So it includes things like crosswalks, lighting, road dieting, so lane removal, travel lane removal, leading pedestrian intervals, make sure I get that right, is the pedestrians go first before the cars. So then they can make their movement and you're not typically having to worry about right turn on red issues, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anna's here, she'll get me if I'm wrong. Pedestrian refuge islands and then rectangular rapid flashing beacons. The idea here is to make things more visible so people slow down and it makes it safer for everybody. Next item, Muldoon Road, Takatnu Mall to DePar Road. Great. Okay, so that is a pretty significant length of Muldoon Road. So you start up at Takatnu and go down to DePar, which is just near the Creekside Town Center area. Fred Meyer's here. And so this one is looking at making some changes to DePar Road or Muldoon Road. Sorry. Traffic calming, non-motorized facilities widening, transit stop improvements, lighting, new pedestrian crossing devices. You may recall we had a fatality on Muldoon Road earlier this year. And so improvements are greatly needed and appreciated in this location. Next is DePar Road, Lake Otis to Regatta intersection safety improvements. So this is one that AMATS recommended as well. And so it's a pretty significant length. DePar Road is right here. I apologize, it's hard to see on the screen, but making sure that the lighting is available so everybody can see it. So it's from Lake Otis on the west to Boniface, Regatta. Thank you. Glad I'm not the one doing this on a regular basis. To Regatta. So anybody who's actually used that area or walks in that area knows that the sidewalks need some help. A number of them have chunks taken out of them so people can fall through. Their legs or canes or walkers or wheelchair wheels can get stuck or fall through the pavement. The sidewalks are pretty small as is. Individuals do go pretty quickly along this road. So the idea is to be looking at signal timing upgrades, shorten pedestrian crossing distances, add sidewalks, improve sidewalks, curb bulb outs, driveway consolidation, new pedestrian crossing at Columbine Street. For those who are not familiar, Columbine Street is right over here. It's between Airport Heights and Dock, and it connects up to this community here to the north and the community to the south. So it would be a new crossing here at this area, which is nice because if you know the area, you either have to cross at Airport Heights or down at Regatta. So it's a pretty lengthy area you have to walk in order to cross the road. DePar is in the AMATS safety plan. So it's exciting to see this one being looked at and possibly moving forward. Next is Northern Lights Road, Lake Otis to, or Lois Drive to Lake Otis. That is a pretty significant section of Northern Lights for anyone who's familiar with it. It's all the way over here on the east side, just a little west side, sorry, a little west of Cars. And then it goes all the way over to Lake Otis. So that's a pretty significant chunk of Northern Lights. As you may recall, that portion of Northern Lights for the portion between Minnesota and the Seward Highway is 4 lanes right now. This project, we'd be looking at doing a lane reduction for the whole segment I've mentioned. And I'll also be doing some other work. Shorten pedestrian crossing distances, add sidewalks where needed to complete ADA compliant non-motorized network. In addition, it'd be done in conjunction with an HSIP or a project that AMATS is doing right now to redo the sidewalks in the area for the pavement condition. So the hope there is to consolidate those projects and make them one at a time so we're not having to close down the road multiple times in a row. Next, Ingram-Gamble Street road diets. I don't think I need to do too much on this one. Everybody kind of knows the concerns in that area, but it is going from 4-lane to 3-lane from Fireweed to 3rd Avenue. This will be done in conjunction with another HSIP project that's out there right now to underground the utilities along Gamble Street that the community's been asking for a while. So it's exciting to see that moving. And this project will also look at doing speed reduction to 30 miles an hour on Ingram and Gamble. Next, we have A Street VRU, it's vulnerable road user improvements. So A Street is a primary north-south connector. The portion we're talking about here is Fireweed to 9th Avenue. For anyone who's familiar with this, this is where it goes, you know, Fireweed here is the south. You go down this hill here, you go underneath the bridge, and you're by the Sullivan Arena there on the east side. It's a pretty significant area in terms of individuals driving pretty quickly through there. So this will be looking at doing lane reduction, non-motorized pathway, non-motorized bridge crossing access to Chester Creek, and reduction in speed limit to 35 miles an hour and speed feedback signs. Next one. I know somebody who's a big fan of this one. Turpin Avenue or Turpin Street, Turpin Avenue, on the Glen Highway out near Takatnu. There is a segment of road that if you go on Boundary, it connects up to Turpin, and you have an on and off ramp of the Glen Highway as well in this area. So a little history on this one. There was the desire to have a kind of half interchange in this location over crossing the Glen Highway, but that has kind of petered out over the years. So it's kind of stuck as is. It's a weird crossing for anybody who uses it. You have the frontage roads coming on the east and the west, and you have people on Turpin going north to either get to the frontage roads or get on or off the highway. So this project will be looking at closing the on and off ramps to the Glen Highway at Turpin and just making it a three-way stop. It's stop control, right? Okay, stop control. Try to get that wrong. And then last one is Boundary Avenue. So just a little further east of the Turpin area, Boundary Avenue at Oklahoma Street, which is connecting through this whole community here, is to provide a raised crosswalk. So the idea there will be to slow speeds in this location, and also to help with a non-motorized pathway on the north side of Boundary. So real quick, brief overview of all those projects. Staff looked through all these projects. They do include the two that AMATS recommended, and then the additions are positive. So staff is recommending approval of this letter of support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Brian.
I don't like number 8. I recognize number 8, the situation with that intersection is a problem. But the reason that on and off ramp is so heavily used is one of the worst delay intersections on that side of town is DeBar and Boniface. And so, and likewise, Muldoon has its own issues. If you close it, I want to know how you're going to mitigate the additional traffic on Muldoon, but you already have a safety project that you're trying to mitigate what's there. And how are you going to deal with what's already a problem?
Okay.
And this isn't probably the venue for that. I recognize this is just a recommendation letter, but I've got concerns that the obvious answer to make that go away is just going to make bigger problems in areas that you already have problems.
Okay, thanks for the comment. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Go ahead.
Really appreciate the work on these projects. I see a lot of parallels here with the Vision Zero action plan. I think this speaks really well to DOT's recent efforts to truly address safety, which I think should be our top priority. I also really appreciate all the information that we're getting on these projects and the back and forth that DOT is having AMATS on these. I think that's new this year as well.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Are there any other comments from the public? Go ahead. Russ.
I see the different pedestrian projects and they all sound great. Are there any plans to go add additional maintenance dollars to take care of those pedestrian facilities with that? Right now we have, you look at it now, there's a lot of the push buttons you can't even access already. So you get to in the winter time, you're going to create new facilities that can be used.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Are there any other public comments? Did you see any online? Okay.
This is Zach Fields.
Okay, go ahead, Zach.
If I
and then next, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I just have to say thank you for that awesome list of projects from Mountain View to Seward Highway to Northern Lights. I know very few people attend these meetings, but people in my district are going to be thrilled as these projects get implemented.
Okay, thank you, Zach. And I see that Jason also has his hand up. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo that these are really good. It's a great list of projects. I think they all have a lot of value and they're addressing some concerns that are pervasive throughout the community. Big support for all of them. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Just for the record, that was Jason Norris. Thank you so much. Are there any other members of the public? Okay, go ahead.
Hold on, I'm gonna be, sorry, it'll be
That's
short.
all right.
No, I think that we have support all of them with the important provision on 8. What happens with the traffic otherwise, but other than 8, the public pedestrian gets a great idea. Right now, state other places would be there. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on this item? Okay, any on mine that I'm missing? Okay, so what's the will of the committee for this one?
Move to approve the letter as written.
Okay, moved by Ms. Babb, seconded by Mr. White. Are there any amendments?
I move to amend or remove number 8.
Okay, moved by Mr. Linemood. We have a second on that one.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Mr. Revello. Any commentary on that?
The only comment is I don't know what sort of level of planning and that DOT's done is what happens to shut it down. Yes, it fixes that intersection, but I think it's just moving the problem, the areas that are already problems. And again, this is a letter of recommendation. So is it still on the list? Yeah, it's still on the list. But I've got concerns that I'm sure Anna or somebody can sit down with me and tell me what.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other discussion or shall we vote on the amendment? Okay.
I guess,
Go ahead.
sure, I'm just interested if Anna has any, I know, now's the time for us to be able to call on people back in the audience. So Anna, do you have any general feedback for?
So thank you, Anna Boson, Central Region Traffic Safety Engineer. Thank you for putting this forward, and I think that getting additional feedback on this early is good. And the history behind some of these projects being nominated was not only the recommendations from the workshop earlier this year from the TAC, but also going through history in some of these corridors and looking at our proposed work plan at DOT that's already on the book. So we have a Glen Freeway project already proposed that will involve public involvement process in that stage of the project that is looking at safety improvements across the whole corridor, but it is a large corridor and it needs more funding and more availability to really try and tackle some of the needs in the entire corridor. So that with that project, the Turpin off ramp, and don't hold me to it, I can get you the quote, but it's like less than 1,000 cars a day are using the ramps. And FHWA's recommendation is to have interchanges be 1 mile apart. With the upgraded diverging diamond interchange at Muldoon that can accommodate those needs. And we have invested HSIP money in the past at this intersection for angle crashes, speeding crashes, run off the road crashes, and it has not really moved the needle on safety enough. Meanwhile, we have a transit route through their area. We have this number here. And
If you are not
I just
muted,
muted him.
please, okay, thank you.
so there are other users in the corridor, and that was kind of the way to make this frontage road be more continuous and supportive of the multimodal use that's in the area. The other factor is that with it having such a low use and the maintenance burden of having this additional off-ramp and on-ramp. And it's time when we tend to add facilities or expand facilities that are supposed to meet the needs, then we also need to look back and see, okay, where can we also make those adjustments for the community that lives there?
So I guess here's a quick question. The process where we are now, it still needs to go through the public process. It'll have review and have looking at it all. So that answer the questions that Brian was asking. So we're not
Yes,
saying it's
many of these projects, although they were submitted initially to headquarters for review, they need to still be scored and ranked and have not been selected by headquarters yet. So this is just one of the steps in the process, and we'll likely see some of these maybe either shift to later years or be removed at all and be incorporated into other projects. So this is very early in the process.
perfect.
I'd like to rescind that motion.
Okay. Motion rescinded. Does the second need to rescind or the first?
Second does.
Okay, Mr. Rebuff, are you open to rescinding as well?
Sure.
Okay. Perfect. Amendment rescinded. Okay, are there any other amendments? Okay, hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Which is to recommend this letter as written to the policy committee. Are there any objections to that motion? Okay, hearing none, that motion is approved. Perfect. We have now made it through all of our action items, which is super important. Those were all very critical, important items. I know that a lot of people are here now for some of our project updates. We do have just 35 minutes, so maybe the question is, at this point, do we want to wait until we're closer to time to think about potentially extending, or do we want to make a motion to do an extensions yet?
15. Question.
I'll make one.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll make a motion. We extend by 15 minutes.
So
Okay, moved by Mr. White, second by Mr. Lindermood to extend 15 minutes. Are there any opposed to that motion?
Hold on a second.
And we can always amend to move it back later if we want.
The motion.
Mr. White,
Second.
Mr. Lindermood.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any opposed to that motion? Okay, hearing none, we are at this point at least through 3:15. We'll see how things go through this. So the next item on our agenda are the marathon comments on the Fish Creek Trail project. And just because we are moving through quickly, we are going to try to move all of the remaining items as quickly as we can. So who is going to be doing that presentation, Aaron?
We do have some individuals on from Marathon. Are you on Marathon representatives?
Yes, this is Evan Bensick. I'm on.
Great.
And maybe before you go, these are not action items, so we are not actually making actions on these. This is a project update. There will be opportunity to hear the presentation. Members of the public will be given opportunity to comment. It's not going to be a back and forth. Not going to be questions. I guess we can ask questions if we have any on the presentation. But just so that it's clear, this is public process to be able to hear and comment. No decisions are being made at this time. So go ahead, take it away, Marathon.
Yeah, so I actually have a presentation if I could share the screen real quick. Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, give me 1 second here. All right, can somebody confirm you guys can see that?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right, well, thank you, committee members, for letting us talk here today. So my name is Evan Bensick. I'm the right-of-way supervisor for Marathon Pipeline here for our western side of operations. Also on the phone with me today is Richard Mousley. He's a right-of-way specialist that works under me here, and he supports our TAPL pipeline there in Alaska. So just want to set some goals here for everybody today before we kind of go through this. I got about 13, 14 slides here. We'll try to, I know we're short on time, so I'll try to be quick about it here. But just want to set some goals. So we really wanted to take this time to kind of provide a better understanding of who we are as a company and as corporate citizens here, and what our value proposition is to the residents of Alaska. And really the key takeaway here is that despite kind of what's been said and kind of been floating around here, we are not opposed to the Fish Creek Trail extension. We have some valid concerns around safety, security, and operations challenges with the preferred route. But ultimately, we are not opposed to the trail. We're trying to be good neighbors here and partners, not adversaries in any way, shape, or form here. So we welcome a continued open dialogue with the project team moving forward here on the project. We at Marathon here feel a very strong duty to the public and for public safety and representation, and we do not take that lightly in any way, shape, or form. So. Like I said, we'll kind of go through here. The first slide is going to be a little bit of who we are. So the big thing here that our big presence in Alaska is that our TAPL pipeline, as well as the Kenai refinery. So it's one of 13 refineries nationwide. It's been in operation since 1969. It has 250 Alaskan employees that work there, keep that plant running. And we use Alaskan crude to produce quality fuel products that move Alaska. We are the only producer of in-state gasoline, jet fuel for Ted Stevens, ultra-low sulfur diesel, asphalt, and more. The products we supply there do come into Anchorage and are shipped via the Alaskan Railroad. We're a big customer there up to North Pole, and we also support the interior. So it is a critical piece of infrastructure here in Alaska. So a little bit about us and a lot of our core values here. So I want to touch on a few of these. Safety and environmental stewardship. We are first and foremost about protecting our people, communities we work in, and the world we all share. We strive to maintain injury-free, accident-free workplaces, and our commitment to safely operating and being environmentally conscious every single day. Integrity, we set extremely high expectations, typically beyond what is required by PHMSA, which is our federal governing agency there. So that we hold ourselves to a very high standard. If we're going to do something, we're going to do it. We're not cutting corners. We're not going in without permits. We're following all the rules, taking all the steps, paying all the fees, and making sure we're doing it the right way. If it's a choice between doing it quick and easy and doing it the right way, we're picking the right way 10 times out of 10. Inclusion, we are very inclusive within our company. We're the largest refiner in the United States. So we have folks from darn near every single state, various countries and backgrounds. So we strive to be a very inclusive company, which leads us to excellent collaboration. And really what we want to continue to do with you all and with the Fish Creek project team is just collaborate, have an open dialogue, find some solutions, address concerns, and ultimately get a project that's going to be a win for everybody. Then excellence. I mean, who doesn't strive for excellence here? We strive to be the best that we can be in our communities, in our operations, to our stakeholders, our communities we work in. So that's just a little bit about who we are as a company. So now on to the actual pipeline. So I know last time we kind of talked, there was some unknown around the pipeline here. So we're trying to get a little bit of the word out here on kind of what it is, and what it supplies, and what we do here for Alaska. So the TAPL pipeline, or the Swirl Alaska pipeline, it's a critical pipeline. It's been in the ground for over 50 years. Operates 7 days a week, 365 days a year. As I mentioned, it supplies supplies the majority of Anchorage, as well as some of the North Pole facilities up there, and also the Ted Stevens Airport and Port of Alaska. And it does supply, like I think I got the number here, it's around 2.2 million gallons every single 24 hours. Like I said, 7 days a week, 365 of fuel to Anchorage, as well as supplying some more of the interior. So for put that in perspective, if the pipeline is down for more than 5 or 6 days, effectively Anchorage starts to run out of fuel. So it's a very critical piece of infrastructure here. Like I said, we've been operating it for a number of years here. It is a 10-inch pipeline, 70 miles long. And we do not take its maintenance or integrity lightly by any way, shape, or form. It's important to us. It's important to the environment. And it's very important to Anchorage and the folks that live there. Moving on here, we have a very robust way of protecting our lines. We spend a lot of time, effort, money, all of the above, in making sure the pipeline operates safely, effectively, efficiently. So our commitment to safety and responsibility is critical to our business. We do a couple different methods to assess the integrity. There's inline inspections tool. You'll commonly hear them referred to as ILI tools, or pigs, for the slang term, if you will. They travel through the lines, scanning the lines, checking for dents, corrosion, any type of cracking, any type of deterioration. And we run multiple types of these tools. Every company's got something a little bit different. Everyone evaluates or something a little different. So we spend a lot of time inspecting those, and those are on regular intervals. And typically we exceed those intervals that the government says we have to inspect them at, just to make sure that it's maintained. We also do above ground inspections. You'll see a picture of a plane there. We do aerial patrols regularly. We have people boots on the ground doing inspections. We travel out to these sites, block valve sites, various locations, and we inspect them very, very frequently for any type of changes, potential spills, encroachments from folks digging where maybe they shouldn't be digging, or maybe they didn't have one call in. So we're monitoring that constantly. And we also do waterway and crossing inspections. So we use high resolution sonar equipment, and we do a lot of waterway crossing inspections. Obviously, we have a very large waterway we cross on the Tapple pipeline, and that one is inspected very meticulously to make sure that we're up to date on any type of changes or potential risks or threats or anything that may present themselves. So very robust, and collect a lot of this data either daily, weekly, annually, depending on the actual inspection frequency. So we do a lot of preventive maintenance as well. So that's just a common piece of the puzzle here. So we complete periodic inspections via those ILI tools and aerial patrols. We do a lot of testing, and we make sure they're sound from an integrity standpoint, as well as functioning as intended. So common projects we'll do is we'll apply some additional coating to protect against corrosion. We'll dig it up and we'll install a sleeve, which is essentially a steel reinforcement that kind of goes over like a clamshell over the pipeline, and beefs up the wall as well. So we'll provide that sleeve, or we'll go ahead and just replace whole sections of pipe, whether that be feet, miles, whatever it might be. We'll go ahead and proactively replace it. The key word is proactive. We're always going out ahead before anything becomes an issue that's a cause for concern. We get rid of it even whenever it just starts to show up. So a lot of our deadlines are regulatory driven. So government does tell us, you have so many days to address an integrity concern, and that is based upon the severity of the integrity anomaly or condition. So there's immediate concerns, there's 180-day conditions. So our crews are going out there and trying to operate within those timelines to make sure that we are within the bounds of the guidelines and laws set forth for pipeline operation. So some of the maintenance considerations we have during these inspections and repairs, typically we'll excavate up the pipe because 99.9% of our pipe is typically buried. We'll dig that up. We'll block off the area, block off access, make sure folks can't get in there, whether that's barrels, jersey barriers, tape, whatever it might be. And then we'll have somebody dedicated on site. It'll be one of our operations technicians, likely an inspector as well, who's a third party that we hire. And they'll be out there as well as safety personnel to make sure everything's going according to plan. A specialized contractor will review the pipeline, any issues that come up are repaired per our standards that follow or actually exceed the PHMSA regulations. And then any third-party work within 50 feet of that pipeline requires dedicated representatives to observe the work at a cost assumed by that third party. So, if another pipeline wanted to cross us or somebody wanted to put in a fiber optic line or something, we would be out there to make sure that they are not getting too close to our line, observing all, the one call laws and observing tolerant zones and all that good stuff to make sure that there are no issues. But we would have somebody out there pretty much round the clock as they are doing that work. So moving on here, so with the Fish Creek, kind of getting back towards Fish Creek here, I know that's a little bit about who we are. So we're going to kind of get a timeline here to shed some light on kind of where we're at here. So we feel Marathon's been a pretty good partner with the project team. We've made ourselves available to the best of our ability, providing data sets when requested and field visits if needed. And we do really appreciate the professionalism of the contract firm, CRW, and their approach. With that being said, we did want to have a couple discussions here on the overall timeline. Kind of as you can see, that we were first approached kind of at the end of 2022. And the conversations at that point were, very technical in nature. We're building the trail. It's going to go over near your line. What would it take to relocate the pipeline? So multiple data requests. We got those back as quickly as we could and provided as much as we were able to provide for what they needed. At that point, things kind of went quiet for a bit. And you'll have to excuse me here. I've been in this position here for, maybe half the year or so. So some of this timeline is before my time, but Richard might be able to supplement here. But it went quiet for around a 10-month-ish period. And then again, we were reached out to and re-engaged. And the goal was, again, about pipeline realignment. At that time, we kind of provided an estimate to the team and kind of that was it. While, CRW did note early the desire to mitigate our concerns, kind of our subsequent discussions were focused on issues other than safety, security, and operational matters. So fast forward here to 2024, we had meetings with the project team, shared updated project elevations, and really appreciate that. But at that point, we kind of realized we needed to discuss the line placement internally to better understand the true interactions and conflicts with our infrastructure. And so after that internal discussion, and along with discussions with members of the Alaska Railroad there, our permit holder, we issued the letter of objection to the current preferred route that was proposed for the trail. Now, I will say we should have brought that letter forward to you guys and the project team, so that way we were not trying to blindside or sneak around or anything like that. I think that's how it came off and maybe how it was received. So we do apologize about that. That was not our intent, and that's something we'll be sure to change forward as we work with the project team. So this led to...
Hey, Evan, real quick pause.
Yeah.
Are you going to be done in about 2-3 minutes? Is that enough time to finish up?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I can go quicker. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I can go a little bit quicker here. So, so this led to kind of a deeper dive into our safety and security and operations. And then there's some miscommunication with the project team seeking to pothole our line without proper notification or authorization. This kind of led to our last meeting, or there was some confusion and miscommunication. So. Again, the important thing is that we had a lot of technical aspects of it, but we felt it was important to kind of share our concerns. And it kind of seemed as though once we got back to this point, it was more so, we hear your concerns, but we're kind of moving forward. And that's kind of the message that was conveyed to us. Maybe that wasn't quite the case, but that's kind of how we took it was, we appreciate the concerns, but this is kind of the proposed path here. So moving on here, like I said, I'll try to be quick through these last slides. So like I said, we are very supportive in a bike trail or a bike path in general. Our goal is to just look at other options. So I know there's some options that are currently out there for S2B and N3A. It ends up paving over a decent amount of our pipeline as well as crosses, and there's a block valve that would be more exposed to the public. So that was really our main concern that we wanted to address here. Moving on to this next slide quickly here. This block valve is the one of main concern. So that proposed trail here, you can see these 3 photos down at the bottom. Essentially, about for the last 45, 50-ish years, it's been kind of tucked away here in the woods and hidden. And about 5 years ago-ish timeframe, there was an apartment complex that was put up, which greatly exposed our valve to the public and everything there, but still not quite terrible. It's the folks that, live in the apartment there or maybe took a wrong turn down the dead end road there. So not a ton of visual there, but the future is really what we're concerned about because that trail goes right next to that block valve. So there's some serious concerns with, hundreds of people walking by our fence every single day, seeing that critical infrastructure, seeing that valve. So there are some genuine safety concerns that we have. There's also some cost burdens that will show up as well. I'll kind of move to this next slide quickly here. It's kind of a very basic graphic, but with that line and that cut and fill and increasing our depth over our pipeline by 10, 15 feet potentially is the final depth. That cost goes way up to excavate our line and makes it more difficult to get there, makes it a lot more expensive, takes a lot longer to actually do the work. So it's closing down the trail, it's finding alternative routes, and it really makes it more complex to our basic tasks that we're doing out there. So moving on here, I got just a couple more slides left here. So like I said, I'll be quick here. So our kind of thought here, and really what we want to do is work with the project team and really explore maybe option S3 as a potential option. I know this is a kind of a crude little markup here for you, but essentially an alternative route that maybe gets it away from our infrastructure, also accomplishes the trail's purpose. And we'd be more than happy to, partner with you guys and provide feedback and do what we can do to help the project. But ultimately, we'd really just like to be included in the planning phases a little bit more and taking some of our considerations really taken into account from our side of things here. So final thoughts. So the pipeline is a critical infrastructure, supports some fuel, a lot of fuel to the region. We've been an engaged business partner providing time, materials, and project throughout the process. We are supportive of that trail. We really don't want folks to think that we are just trying to block this thing and don't think it's a good idea. We certainly think it's a great idea. We are in support of it. We just want to make sure that our concerns and which we believe are valid. We just want to make sure that we are valued and included in the project planning process and want to work with the team here in the future to make sure that we all end up with a good trail and it's a win for everybody. So I know I kind of breezed through that really quickly at the end there. And I think I saw a hand that maybe popped up while I was presenting. But
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Evan. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Question.
Go ahead.
And this is probably because I'm new and I should have asked this when we were looking at the agenda order earlier. But how often do those in the community who are impacted by projects have an opportunity to speak to give a presentation like this? Is it usually the project team who presents to the committee?
Here at the AMATS technical committee, typically the project team will come and present and tell us a little bit about the project. I don't think we've ever had a presentation from a stakeholder to the committee.
No,
Maybe
we don't typically allow stakeholders to come present on projects because it's done through the project process. So this one is a little unusual. We received a request from the Deputy Commissioner of DOT stepping in for some reason on this project, and it's through Sean Holland who asked for this to be added to the agenda.
Thank you.
Sounds good, thanks. Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, we are going to, I guess it's the opportunity as well. If any members of the public want to speak on this one, we will provide a time after the next one, which is kind of also on the Fish Creek Trail. But if anyone wants to speak, we have a hand raised, so maybe we'll go to
Chris V is on the line.
Okay, go ahead, Chris V. And you please state your full name and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Chris Campbell, a resident in Anchorage. Just wanted to thank Marathon for presenting, but just had a comment or question about why does exposure lead them to believe that there's an increased risk for issues when we have multiple utilities that people hike, walk, bike past on a daily basis in the Anchorage Bowl, Power Line Pass being an example. The gas line going up the hillside being another example. There's gas utilities run down 15th Street as proximate to me that are above the ground for probably gas blow off type stuff. You know, that kind of stuff. It seems like they're just using the potential of something happening as a leverage point. You know, if we want to talk about impact, we allow camping next to a Klutna Lake, and that is the entire water source for Anchorage. And nothing, to my knowledge, has ever happened to that. I mean, you could go in there and poison the entire city if you wanted to, but it's never happened. And we don't block people from hiking, biking, camping, recreating there. Just the thoughts that were popping up in my head while he was presenting.
Okay, thank you for the comments. For the time that we have and given the way that we typically do this, we're not going to be doing question and answers. So these are good comments, and there can be opportunities in other venues for more discussion. But if there are comments from the public, we do want to give you a chance to state your comment. Looks like we have Michael online. So go ahead, Michael. You'll state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Michał Stryzak. I live close to the Fish Creek Trail, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me and to the other individuals. I very much support a Fish Creek Trail. I've been reading this has been in the works for close to 20 years. I've spoken before at the railroad meetings. I've sent written comments, and at the transportation fair last fall, I was told that it is happening, that it was going to be starting, I think, construction in 2025. I was very excited about that. I've got 2 small kids. Well, now they're 8 and 12. We bike very often to roaming. We bike to the coastal trail, and this would be a great addition. It would be so much safer for my kids to be biking on this trail all the way to the coastal trail rather than having to go on the side streets there. And I really hope that this goes through. I know there were some landholders who did not want it to go through, but my belief is that the vast majority of the people do support it, and it would be a real shame if a couple of individuals were able to stop it. And I also echo the comments that were just said previously. There's lots of exposed infrastructure in the city, and that's not really a good reason to prevent the trail from going in. That's going to serve so many individuals that live in this part of town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Do we have any other comments?
Zach Fields here.
Go ahead, Zach.
Thank you. Yeah, so I represent a legislative district of which Fish Creek is the border. And the Fish Creek Trail is actually the #1 thing that my constituents ask me about unprompted. You know, if I'm at Sagaya, if I see people out on the trails, they'll say, hey, Zach, what's going on with Fish Creek? When is it going to get done? What do I need to do to advocate for it? So there's just deep, broad public support. Anyone who's followed the public process of identifying the route is familiar with this. This is a years-long public process. Literally hundreds of people have been involved. I think we have to step back and recognize just last week, another pedestrian was killed on the streets of Anchorage. So we have a theoretical safety issue.
I think you muted yourself.
It's a remote learning day, so I'm trying to take care of kids and work at the same time, which is very hard. So anyway, we have safety issues right now, which is someone being killed almost every week on Anchorage roadways because we lack safe, non-motorized transportation. There is no viable alternative for a north-south route in the Fish Creek corridor. Forest Park Drive is very narrow. I would ask, what would the impacts be on landowners if we were to make a trail along there? There's no space. There's no space on the west side of the creek. This is the only alternative for safe north-south travel. And by the way, the connectivity in that region is particularly important because this trail does serve Romig and West as school zones. It is not logical to say that having a trail would make the Fish Creek, the marathon infrastructure any less safe. You know, by that logic, I would park my car in a dark parking lot that no one's near. I think, frankly, my car would be more likely to be broken into in a dark, unoccupied parking lot compared to, you know, a bright shopping center where lots of people are coming and going. I appreciate the committee's action earlier to advance a lot of safety projects for Anchorage, and we have to be focused on safety. Our city lacks non-motorized connections. This is the most important missing link for the entire city's non-motorized trail system. So I would urge the Technical Advisory Committee to move forward and reject any attempt to delay or kill the trail, frankly, under false pretenses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And again, we're not making any actions at this time. It's more of a chance to learn and to hear from the public. Go ahead. It looks like Megan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So my name is Megan Holton, and I just also wanted to express my support for the ongoing sort of moving forward of this trail project, even while it's still like clear there's some things that need to be worked out. I was part of the original group almost 10 years ago now, who started working together with a lot of differing opinions. And I think we've just seen over the years, as the Parks Department has sort of shepherded this, we've been able to get different organizations and stakeholders to sort of come to some sort of agreement to continue to like move forward and allocate funding to this trail project. So I think we can get there, and I just want to express support and agreement with what some of the other people on the other citizens on this call have said. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Megan, for your comment. I have Karen next with your hand up. Go ahead, state your name, and you got 3 minutes too. Okay, looks like you're still on.
Okay,
mute.
sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm used to Zoom, and so I was like, where do I unmute? Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for providing the opportunity for us to have here. I was also happy to hear one of the committee members ask about Marathon presenting, because I was very confused about why a stakeholder was being allowed to present. And so that actually brings up a question of one of the rumors that we have heard, for those of us who have been supporting this trail for so long, is that the issue has been elevated to the governor's office. And I think that we may have just had a little bit of confirmation of that. I'm not sure. But what I would like to really say, I mean, we do need this trail connection, absolutely. What we also need is we need the route that has been selected, so that it is not pushed aside because, you know, we don't have the money to be able to do it. It's going to be a lot more expensive if another route is chosen. But also, I mean, I do hear Marathon's concerns, but I would remind Marathon that, you know, this has been an active trail for decades. I mean, I've lived in that area for 30 years and have used it quite a bit. And when that apartment complex went in, I mean, it's been there for what, 10, 12 years? I'm not sure exactly, but in other words, that infrastructure, that gated infrastructure has been exposed for that long, and there has been, you know, there's been no trouble there. And I don't understand why they would think that there would be additional trouble. And I do want to echo the sentiment that I think that Representative Fields brought up, which is that one of the best ways to have security somewhere is to have more eyes on the ground. And that's what having a trail there is going to do. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I do not see any other hands up. Is there anyone in the room that would like to comment?
Hello?
One sec on the phone.
Apologize. This is Kathy Gleason with Turnigan Community Council.
Can you hold a sec, Kathy?
Absolutely.
So I know that we do have Parks and Rec is intending to do a presentation also on Fish Creek and was looking for 15 minutes for it, which would mean starting now. I don't want to stop any comments on this. We could extend another 15 minutes, which could give us some more public comment and the presentation, given that we're at 3 o'clock now. So thoughts?
I've moved to extend 15 minutes to 3:30.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ladd, seconded by Mr. White to extend to 3:30. Are there any objections? Okay, hearing none, we are extended to 3:30. Before we go to the phone, Kathy, we are going to do the room real quick. And those online, if you do want to comment, please raise your hand. And that's how I'll manage the queue online. Okay, so in the room, we have some public that would like to speak.
Barney Isaacs, I'm with the Turnigan Community Council. I'll defer to Kathy since she got through.
Okay, perfect. Anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Okay, go ahead. State your name and
Very quick, Paul, support the idea. I know that, I live down on the Lakers Cove. Coastal trails seems to be picking up more traffic, especially with these electric bikes. There are just more people, wider range. And a lot of people end up asking me how to get to Fish Creek. There was a wrong connection connecting all the way through. So that we end up with a nice connection. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for your comment. Anyone else here in the room that would like to comment on this? Okay, go ahead.
Rhodes with the Anchorage Park Foundation. I just want to say that we support the project and we understand, just as every project moves forward, there's going to be concerns and there's going to be efforts to try and alleviate those concerns. But ultimately, this is a project that has been promoted and advocated for 30 years. It finally made it onto the list that goes to use federal transportation dollars to get on the Transportation Improvement Program paid list is decades of work. And for all of the folks that know that this has been around that long and to know, I mean, Marathon has been there for the 30 years we've been working on it. And it just, some people are it's just gonna have to move forward. If we would have listened, or if we listened to everyone, but if we would have stopped a project for every single person, we wouldn't have any project in the, ever happen for non-motorized transportation. And just asking people to think about the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail and how many, there was a lot of work done on that, but if we wouldn't have moved forward on these projects after listening and working and finding an alternative, a preferred alternative, then we wouldn't have the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail. So urge this committee to keep moving forward. So thankful that all of the advocates were able to get it onto the Transportation Improvement Program paid list. Proud of the team working on it and just encouraging you to keep moving forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So any other comments in the room? Okay, so I'm gonna give the last chance for those in the room now, and then we'll do the last chance online, and then we'll go to the presentation. After which, if you haven't commented, there will be opportunity. So anyone else in the room that would like to comment? Okay, don't see anybody in the room. So online, I see Jeff. And then I know that Cheryl wants to comment too, but I'm gonna Jeff first. Go ahead, Jeff.
Opportunity to comment here. I did send an email to the members for my general supporting comments for supporting Fish Creek Trail Connect. After listening to Marathon's presentation, he mentioned that Marathon wants to be a good partner and work with the different stakeholders, and they're not opposed to the trail, which is great. Just had a a suggestion to Marathon. One way they could be a good partner is maybe it probably wouldn't cost too much money to enclose that block valve infrastructure in some way that just makes it visually not look like what it is, I guess. Or maybe they could build a building around it and actually contain the entire thing. I don't know if that'd be possible for safety wise, but that's my comment, and I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. And just to confirm, it's Jeff Butler.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. And then we had one more online. I'm not seeing her hand. Kathy. Okay, Kathy, go ahead. You'll give your name and you got 3 minutes.
I think that was the one you muted.
Oh, I probably muted you because,
6 to mute.
yeah. So you'll need to unmute yourself again. I muted a Diane Bloomer. Would that have been Kathy? Okay.
I think it's at 248-0442.
That's okay. So I don't have the ability to. Okay, maybe we'll do is we'll move on and she can comment after.
You were saying *6.
Star 6, yes.
Okay.
Hello?
You're on your phone.
Oh, there you go. I see you popped up. Okay.
I apologize. Yeah, I'm Kathy Gleason, president of Turnagain Community Council. And I know there was reference to a working group, a Fish Creek Trail to Ocean working group that formed about 10 years ago. And I was a member on that, representing Turnagain Community Council back then. And we have tried to provide some detailed input, have been engaged to the extent that we've been allowed to be engaged since the beginning of this project. And we did pass a couple of resolutions going on 2 years ago with regard to this project. We support it, but it's conditional on a couple of levels, and those conditions have not been met. We also passed those resolutions before we were informed earlier this year that a large section of the coastal trail in that immediate north area is going to have to be relocated to accommodate the intersection of the Fish Creek Trail connection to the coastal trail. So we have not been provided any details about that. I did get a little more information out of an informal Anchorage Trails group yesterday, which was very helpful, but that was just as of yesterday. We have not had time to get a more detailed explanation from the project team and to have a lot more dialogue about the implications of that northern area. One of the big conditions of our support, which is fully within the Turnagain Community Council boundaries, is that we want the trail at the toe of the bluff on the south end as moving north. So there's a lot less impact to buffering vegetation to the west, and also less disruption to property owners and residents who live along that more southern area of where the trail is would be running through. So I kind of mimic Marathon's, we still support the trail, but we feel like there are still some concerns that need to be addressed. And we would like to be valued and included with the project team at a much more detailed level so that we can work these things out so that the trail project can move forward. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Kathy. I do not see any additional hands online, so we will now move over to our presentation, which is 6D Fish Creek Trail Project. And is that going to be Mike, I guess?
Oh, presenting.
Perfect. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair Coy. My name is Mike Verana. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for the municipality. And this is an update for the Fish Creek Trail Project. Starting with this slide here, this photo looks north from Northern Lights Boulevard. And this dotted line shows the approximate location where the trail will be. And I think we have something like 50 slides, so I apologize for the number of times I say next slide. Just attempt to work through it quickly. So the project will connect key non-motorized facilities while also addressing coastal trail erosion protections, drainage, and safety features, including ADA compliant elements. Next slide, please. The project purpose is to establish a safe, multi-use trail connecting Fish Creek Trail to Tony Knowles Coastal Trail, addressing gaps in Anchorage's trail system. It's been funded by $1.54 million to date, 91% of which is federally funded on the AMATS tip, with voter-approved local bonds covering the remainder. Next slide, please. The project supports development of a non-motorized connection between the Fish Creek Trail and Coastal Trail. This graphic here helps to illustrate the lack of non-motorized infrastructure north and west of Northern Lights Boulevard. Northern Lights and Minnesota are both depicted in yellow, and the coastal trails in blue, and then the project area is inside the dashed rectangle. Not a single non-motorized facility exists for north-south traverse other than Northern Lights to Earthquake Park and Northern Lights Boulevard to Chester Creek between these two trail or road systems. Next slide, please. So 3 adopted plans highlight the wish for a connection through the Fish Creek estuary area. The project has been approved on 4 separate bonds, as well as being approved by AMATS. Public comment and involvement has demonstrated that the public process supports a connection in this corridor. Next slide, please. This graphic is simply a representation of the 3 plans that I mentioned on the previous slide. In 1997, the Anchorage Area-Wide Trails Plan identified 2 future paths paralleling Fish Creek Trail between Northern Lights and the Coastal Trail. 2016 to 2020, AWU built a maintenance road that was constructed and was also fenced, which restricted access to the estuary area. Fish Creek Trail to the Ocean group was formed around that time. Fish Creek Trail connection was included in the AMATS tip. And in 2021, and then in the 3 following years, the public passed bonds to fund this project kicking off. Let's see, next slide, please. Oops. And the remainder of the timeline here simply highlights more public outreach and then project and funding timelines. Next slide. So as you can see on this 2-year timeline, going out 25 and 2026, we plan to put on the bond before the voters the $1.3 million for the municipality's 9% for the construction of the trail. The railroad board will have an opportunity to approve 95% design late in 2025, and then bidding and construction are slated to take place in 2026. Just read my During the development of the DSR, 6 alternatives were explored, 3 in the north, 3 in the south. The preferred alternative is the combination of the 2, and it's highlighted here in blue. Let's see, next slide, please. So S1 and, 2 alternatives explored routes along the west side of the railroad, within the railroad corridor. S1 and S2 are similar, and we are looking at incorporating elements of both. The third alternative, S3, which Evan from Marathon mentioned, explored an alternative along La Honda Drive. It was significantly more expensive, as you can see in the graphic here, and it had more impacts on the surrounding area, as well as railroad operations. Next slide. So this cross section, if we start in the middle, we can see where the railroad is located, and to the left, the maintenance road. the Able Maintenance Road. And then you can see the pipeline, you can see the location of alternative 1 and alternative 2. And then to the far left, you can see the private property boundary of the 4 or 5 homes along the west side of the proposed routes. Next slide. And then this cross section we got in our very most recent environmental document. A couple things to note here. It highlights the location and design where the trail would take place on the bank. The yellow or green line, forgive me, I struggle with color. To the left represents the private property boundary. And to the right, the railroad. And bear in mind that we must remain 50 feet outside of the railroad minimum, non-negotiable. Next slide. Similar cross section. I believe this is the trail adjacent to private property, 2 homes to the north. Similar in nature. It digs down further into the bank. But again, the line representing the private property as well as the railroad and the minimum distance. Next slide, please. So that was the southern alternative, and then we come to the northern alternatives, in which N3 is preferred. It can be entirely paved. It's the most cost-effective, and it avoids impacts in the estuary. It allows the project to realign a problematic portion of the coastal trail between Westchester Lagoon. Lost for words. And Fish Creek. Anybody who's a frequent trail user, I think, is familiar maybe with the challenges of that area, getting from Westchester Lagoon to the Fish Creek Bridge. And as you can see, the alternatives are much more expensive than N3. Next slide, please. Similarly, here's a cross section that shows the options in the north. On the far right is the railroad. In the lower is the maintenance road as well. And you can see that the 2 alternatives place the trail, 2 alternatives we don't prefer, the project doesn't prefer, place the trail in the estuary or at the boundary of the estuary, which is problematic in its own right. Estuary is protected by 2 conservation easements. Next slide, please. So together, here's the preferred alternative, like I said, depicted in light blue, and it brings the 2 elements together. Next slide. So some concerns we heard. Next slide. So one of the concerns that we've heard, the project group has heard, is the trail is going to significantly impact private property and specifically backyards. And the goal of the project is to minimize impacts and to provide to private and adjacent. The only private property outside of railroad ownership and right-of-way will be an acquisition of a small amount of asphalt driveway located next to Marathon's block valve. Evan did a good job of highlighting those for the group, and we have some graphics in this presentation that will as well to get around that block valve facility. Next slide. So similarly, the orange dashed line you see comes up from the bridge, the pedestrian bridge that crosses over Northern Lights Boulevard and travels to the left and the west around the block valve. Next slide. Here we zoom in on it further, and again, you can see the apartment private property and where the proposed route would be. Next slide. This slide shows the railroad and private property boundaries, and then this next one, next slide, we've highlighted in red and used this yellow arrow to depict the width of the railroad right-of-way. And then next slide. We can see yet closer the homes, where the private property boundaries of those homes are, and the width of the railroad right-of-way. Next slide, please. And so this is along the southern section. It's on the west side of the railroad tracks. In the right corner of the picture, you can see a chain link fence that belongs to the railroad. It keeps people from traveling into the railroad right away. The topography is sloped, and as you can see, quite a bit of vegetation. And somewhere along this mid bank is roughly where the S1 and S2 alternatives overlap, and uphill and to the left is where the private properties lie along the southern half of the proposed route. Next slide, utility concerns, next slide. So Marathon believes, not to speak for them, but that by constructing a non-motorized pathway in the area, it will increase awareness and visibility of their facility, and thereby increase vulnerability. The project team is dedicated to improving the areas, especially the block valve location, to improve security and safety for both members of the public and for the utility itself. This next graphic slide, thank you. It just shows other ways that the public is able to know where a pipeline is. Next slide, please. So this just sort of recenters ourselves again, brings us back to this block valve at the southern edge of the project. Next slide. As you can see, this picture is taken facing north. This is on the pedestrian bridge. The person who took this picture would have just crossed Northern Lights Boulevard, and the arrow points out the fence surrounding the block valve. Next slide, please. This picture shows a section of the coastal trail, probably familiar to people that use the coastal trail, where a similar valve is. It has been for many years, and the coastal trail passes by. Next slide, please. So the project team agrees that the pipeline is a critical asset, but it's confident that by standard construction procedures, such as design safeguards, using federal standards, having Marathon on site during construction, all lead to a successful project. It's also worth noting that Marathon has no current plans for repairs in this area, which would indicate that the pipeline is in good condition or could be interpreted as such. Next slide, please. Again, recentering. And in this one, you can see the location of, we just highlighted the Northern Lights pedestrian pathway and bridge, as well as the playground at the apartment complex. Next slide, please. And then here's the block valve in question, taken from the apartment complex parking lots. Again, the project team looks forward to working to improve security and safety of this facility through implementation. Next slide, please. Here's the project team walking around the west or the left side as we've been looking at it of the block valve facility. Next slide. Here's another picture that, I don't know, what do we use a selfie stick for this? The sort of an elevated view of the block valve itself. Next slide, please.
2-minute warning.
What's that?
2-minute warning.
Okay. I think I'm doing good with that. But thank you. This next section, up somewhere around where the northern and southern alternatives go from one to another, shows an exposed section of the pipeline. Again, the team looks forward to improving safety and security of the current facility through the implementation of the project and the things that it'll bring. Next slide, please. Another view of the pipeline inside of its casing, exposed in so much as it is inside the casing here in the creek. Next slide, please. For context, the next few slides show locations of pipeline. This is along the coastal trail. Next slide, please. So the project team recognizes this project will introduce new maintenance challenges for Marathon within the corridor. However, given Marathon's proven track record in successfully completing projects and managing facilities throughout Anchorage, demonstrates that this initiative is consistent with standard operations and presents minimal infrastructure concerns. Moreover, the benefits of this corridor far outweigh the added maintenance responsibilities for the municipality. A few more graphics that again show location of existing pipeline relative to other pedestrian and travel infrastructure. Next slide, please. Another that does the same along Northern Lights. Next slide, please. Here's the pipeline traveling underneath Ted Stevens International Airport and the runway. Again, just more context. And here it is traveling under Cook Inlet, as Evan's slide also did a good job showing. Next slide, please. So the project team is committed to working through any concerns during construction. Let's keep it moving here. Next slide, please. The computer here. I could probably just talk it out here. Yeah. Oh, you're in.
I think you're in the text. No, you're in the text. You just maybe get the.
Christine here. The down here.
Oh.
Okay, similar infrastructure and a similar, or a construction project, I should say, where the concerns are being addressed. Next slide, please. I simply want to add that the project team recognizes that this project will introduce new maintenance challenges for Marathon within the corridor. It will also provide an incredible new asset to the public, which will increase the access, a safe alternative for vulnerable road users. With that, next slide, please. Thank you for having us here today. If you'd like to learn any more about the project, input from the public project plans, ton of information, you can go to fishcreektrail.com.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mike. So we're at about 5 minutes left. Is there appetite to extend another 15? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, a motion to extend for another 15 minutes to 3:45.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Schoolhouse with a second.
Yes, this is me. A second.
Okay, I think Ms. Babb beat you yesterday, so second by Ms. Babb. Is there any opposed to the motion to extend to 3:45? Okay, hearing none, we are extended to 3:45. Are there any questions for the presenter from the committee? Or comments, I guess. Go ahead.
I have a question. It was about one of the slides about the, I guess it would be the northernmost route proposed along La Honda. In tiny text on that slide, did it say that if that route was chosen, that the pipeline would need to be moved? Is that what that said? I'm sorry, I don't.
Go ahead if you know.
There's technical.
So the S3,
option.
the S3 La Honda option, it's goes along La Honda, and then it included design of an underpass underneath the railroad, and the elevation that it would come out underneath the railroad before it turned north would be such that we would impact Marathon's viewpoint.
Okay. Is that why the price tag is so much higher for that one?
That, in addition to, it would require a construction of an additional line of the railroad when essentially a tunnel is put underneath the railroad. So to construct that, we'd have to take that line off, build a reroute for the railroad to haul that off.
And state your name if you would.
My name is Colin Singleton, just answering questions for the project.
Okay, perfect. CRW. Thanks, Vaughn. Other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, do you have another one?
I have another one.
Okay, go ahead. That's fine.
I was wondering about the fences, the private property, because that is something that I've heard a couple times, is that there's private property involved and it would impact some of the neighbors to the trail. And I was wondering if we could look at those, the preferred alternative sections. And if you could clarify where the fences are now versus where they would end up after the preferred alternative.
Let's use this one.
Could you go to the section, or I guess,
If you can go to the sections, because I think it had it in there, it just wasn't
see.
Yeah, actually, that, if you go back
Go to.
to the black and
22,
white, the black and white one that you
Oh,
were just on.
okay.
Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. So is this the preferred alternative?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a big yellow line on the left and then two smaller green lines next to the trail section. What are those? Are
So
those,
the yellow line is the property line. And what was the other question?
what are the two sort of dashed greener ones there? Yeah.
Oh,
Can I hop in?
please do, yeah.
Great.
I don't remember reading
So
that.
if you can just point to the folks,
Help us.
so here's the property line. Here is the here's the proposed fence and the existing fence. So in this particular station, it would be relocated approximately 2 to 3 feet. And is that the average up and down? Because there's several houses. Yeah, so if you go to the next one, that shows a station which is basically the next property down. I'm just curious about the average impacts to properties. I'm gonna blame this on not having a mouse. It's tough. We've all been there, right? So basically the next station is similar. It's pretty consistent. I think it's 4 to 6 feet in that case. And really what constrains us is the fact that we have not been able to locate the pipeline. Sometimes there's discrepancies up to 7 feet, and we want to be, as Marathon has stated, good partners to Marathon. So basically, see here, we've cited, okay, it's somewhere in here. That's why there's 2.
And I'm just gonna jump in. We haven't had the opportunity yet to locate the pipeline
We haven't had the opportunity yet.
due to weather or the seasons change.
And so here also we're constrained by the fact that we're really close to that 50 feet. So Kathy had mentioned that one of the stipulations was that we limit from the community council, that we limit the impacts to private property and move it as close as possible. So we have been working to do that and are excited to get more precise locations for that pipeline so we can refine this to a more final iteration.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, let's open it up then to public comment. And if those online will start to raise your hands, that'll be great. We're going to start here in the room though first. We'll just hold tight online. Go ahead in the back.
Yeah, my name is John Haxby. I happen to be the property. If we go to the other one. First of all, I'd like to just let the committee know, Ms. Keegan has been in my backyard since this. There's been no dialogue with her in my backyard, seeing how this would impact my backyard. I happen to have 2 4-year-old twins. As you go to the other slide, back up. You showed it originally there, right there. Where that dark spot is on the left-hand side, that's my house. For that property line where it says it shows the property line, that happens to be 20 feet from my dining room. And if you look where that S1 is or S2, I'm not sure which one it is, just to the right of it. That's in my backyard. It's 20 feet from my living room window. With 1,000 people a day coming here. I can't say there's been much collaboration with Ms. Keegan. The only one who's been out there is the mayor. She walked that property line, it's Katie. I certainly don't see that we're gonna take out my fence, they're gonna take out my backyard, all of the trees in my backyard, fences in my backyard that have been there for 50 years or longer, is gone. So I know you all think this is a good idea, but there's been no collaboration. None whatsoever. Other than Ms. Keegan telling me that my property values are going to go up. So I'm going to make millions. Ha ha ha. I don't find that amusing at all. So with respect to your comment, what's it going to do? The fence line is going to destroy mine. Absolutely gone. And it's going to do the same thing that 4 neighbors to the north of me, neighbor to the south.
it's gonna destroy the value of my property. 100%. You might think it's amusing that I'm going to have an increase in value because I have a bike trail 20 feet from my living room window. I don't agree with that. And secondly, this easement, as originally stated in the patents, was for railroad, telegraph, telephone, not bike trails.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And just, keeping it civil, it's not calling out. I appreciate your comment.
Making a statement, that's what I was told. Not calling anybody out, just saying what was said.
Okay, let's move to the next person.
Thank you, Chuck. Just an observation. It seems like there's three people here that need to be considered the major stakeholders. The property owners, obviously, significant impacts to them. Marathon, I don't think we should be dismissive of their concerns. But the one elephant in the room is the railroad has said it's not negotiable to be within 50 feet of the track. I would challenge them on that. I would absolutely challenge them. Oregon Pacific Railroad is 50 miles of railroad going to Portland, Oregon. Bike trail district path right next to the track, right next to the track. Railroad should not be the one that say it's not negotiable. If they were negotiating on that, we would have any of these problems. Marathon wouldn't be upset. The property owners wouldn't be upset. The problem solved. But when you have one party that says they won't play well and is allowing this to happen, it's a problem. That's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments in the room? Go ahead, Emily.
My name is Emily Weiser. I'm also the board president of Bike Acreage, who I'm speaking for today. I'll keep it brief. I really appreciate the committee extending so much today and making sure to have time for public comment. It's clearly an important topic to a lot of us. So Bike Acreage has supported the project from the start. It's a really important connector and a great way to integrate neighborhoods with our wonderful green belt. I also really appreciate railroad has mentioned this line is that one doesn't want it. Allowing the use of their equipment to greater public good. We've also supported the preferred alternative from the start. I look forward to seeing that go forward because it's along the estuary, so it provides that benefit of a nice view of great things to be without being in the estuary and impacting it. And it's also a responsible use of dollars that is the alternative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Any other public comments in the room? Okay, we'll go online and I see Justin's hand up. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, can you guys hear me, Brad?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thanks, Mike Braniff, for that excellent presentation. I know you didn't have all the time to talk that you probably wanted to have. I would just ask if there's a way to maybe make that presentation public and maybe add it to the Fish Creek Trail connection website. That would probably be greatly appreciated since it seemed like there's a lot of detail that was integrated into that slide show presentation that you didn't get to talk about. So I think that maybe making that widely available to everybody would be great. I'm also a resident in Turnagain. I'm a frequent user of the trails in and out of my neighborhood. I'm a frequent user of that pedestrian bridge that has been made reference to several times. And it hasn't gone unnoticed to me that that bridge is actually dedicated to somebody in our community. That bridge was dedicated in 1994 to a young student in the Turnagain neighborhood who was killed in a pedestrian and driver collision. His name was David Blake. He was an 8-year-old, maybe going on a 9-year-old, who was trying to get to school that was hit on Northern Lights Boulevard by a driver. So when we talk about the alternatives for this trail and Forest Park Drive being a viable alternative, or just simply going down Turnagain Boulevard further, I find those really to be kind of non-starters, since we all know that the greatest danger in the room for pretty much all trail users of any age, kids all the way up to retirees, is drivers. And by having this trail connection project be separated and go so directly over to the coastal trail, you mitigate a lot of those safety issues. That bridge has really been a vital link for a lot of people who are on the south side of Turnagain as well. And it ultimately cuts out a lot of crossings. The Fish Creek Trail Connection Project, as it's now proposed with the preferred alternative, will go one step further in mitigating the fact that you've completely removed kids and pedestrians from the dangers of inattentive of drivers. Also, just wanted to mention that the setback there of 2 to 3 feet for the fence to be moved seems like a minimal impact. I know that there's all kinds of legalese jargon being thrown around with the easements and what is talked about with the railroad and their right of way and whatnot. I know that there's been the cases that have been decided on that front. I just really find them to also be non-starters in the realm of debate about this project. Really greatly support everybody else that's been talking about the project, and just look forward to the being completed, and want to thank everybody for their efforts on making sure that this vital piece of infrastructure gets completed.
Okay, thank you, Justin. So we've got 5 minutes on our, and we've got I see 3 more people in the queue.
May I ask a question? Are we gonna have time for the fireweed station?
That would depend if the committee wanted to.
I don't know if there's appetite just to, they're here. They've spent a lot of time waiting patiently with this other important thing.
And the Pacific Bike Lane is also there.
Oh, goodness.
So
I think because there's no action that we're asking of the fireweed team, that we should push to the next meeting.
Okay.
It sucks that they
I know.
patiently waited, however, I think fair statement.
I know the PBL, their timeline is up at the end of this.
All right.
So
I don't want to cut you into anymore. Just wanted to.
So we only have 4 minutes. We have more comments than we have time for. So do we want to entertain a motion to extend? Yes, I would entertain a motion to extend. If someone would like to make it. Move to extend 15 minutes.
I'll second.
Yeah, Mr. Lindeman, second. Ms. Kohlhaas to extend 15 minutes to 4 o'clock. Do you have any opposed? Okay, we are extended to 4 o'clock. So next on the online comment is Kurt. You'll state your name. You got 3 minutes.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for being patient. My name is Kurt Egelhofer. I live near Westchester Lagoon, and I use the Coastal Trail every day and Fish Creek Trail as well. And I highly support the connection. My comment is, no matter where you put the connection, you're going to piss somebody off. There's going to be somebody who objects to it. And at some point, at the end of the day, if you want to build this project, you need to choose one of the alternatives. I would pile on with the previous speaker, one of the property owners. I would question the 50-foot setback with the railroad as well. It is their right of way, but if you go down to Elderberry Park and get on the coastal trail, you are less than 50 feet from the railroad. And as far as I know, they haven't had any problems with that. If they do, I think you could build a 6-foot fence that would keep people off the railroad. So again, both my wife and I support the project, and thank you for my comment.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Next I see Karen. You'll state your
Hi.
name.
Hi, I'm Karen Button, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak. I mean, I was speaking to Marathon before, and am I allowed to speak after the last presentation by
Yes,
the committee? Yes?
Yes. That's a
Okay,
different-
great. Thank
so,
you
go
so
ahead.
much. Okay, I just wanted to say something. There's been some reference to the railroad, and I just want to echo that. As far as, I mean, I think it's great that the railroad is a participant and that they are willing to have a trail in the right of way. But I don't support their position. It just feels very extreme, and you know, it's not, they're not being consistent around town to say that it needs to be in this, you know, outer 25 feet of their right of way. It just doesn't make sense. And they are, you know, I've been to Mr. Haxby's backyard, and it's pretty bad what's going to happen there. And a lot of this is because the railroad has decided that they're not going to have leases any longer with folks that they've had leases with for decades. And that's not really, you know, that's something that should really be discussed with the railroad. I mean, we're talking, you know, 3 property owners here. It's not that much of a trail or a portion of the trail. If the railroad would just be a little bit more reasonable and just move the trail closer. I mean, those of us on the Fish Creek Trail to the Ocean group wanted the existing road to actually be the trail. I mean, that would make the most sense. You know, it would be the cheapest by far, for sure. But the railroad has opposed that. And, you know, I understand their safety concerns. They talk about potential derailment. In talking with some railroad experts, they've said, you know, this at the stated speed limit that the railroad is moving through that section and the angle of the curve, there's no way that there would be a derailment unless there was something like an earthquake or something else catastrophic. And, you know, while I appreciate the railroad trying to maintain safety, the reality is that we're all really trying to work together here and to have some compromises. And I would like to see, you know, the city or, you know, DOT, whoever it may be that is part of this team, to really elevate this issue with the railroad. It's like there's no reason for them to be so stubborn about this, you know, with 3 properties. It would go a long way to solving a lot of people's concerns. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Not seeing, are there any others hands raised that I'm not seeing online? Nope, looks like I don't see any other hands raised online. Anyone else in the room have a comment to share? Online, okay, I don't see any on there. So thank you so much for coming and doing the presentations and for all the comments and for coming and letting your voices be heard. We don't have any action items, as I mentioned, on this, but we do appreciate the ability to hear what's going on in the community and provide this venue for each of you to express and convey your thoughts. And this will be on the policy committee in 2 weeks as well as a project update. So we will now move to the next item on our agenda, which is item 6C, the protect. Go ahead.
Before we
Yeah.
move, I've been receiving a lot of comments from the community about the project. I wanted to ask AMATS, what is other opportunities that the public can also present express their supports or other comments on this project? Is the public info system?
I guess I can go ahead and let everybody know, but the project has been put on hold by DOT. They have canceled all their public meeting opportunities. So I am not sure when people will be able to comment on this project other than providing comments to AMATS through a normal process.
Okay, thank you, Aaron, and thanks for the question. So we will move now to item 6C, the Protected Bike Lane Pilot Project. And I think you have about 5 minutes.
Okay. Try to be quick. My name is Colin Singleton. I'm with CRW Engineering Group, and I'm here to talk to you about the Anchorage Protected Bike Lane Pilot Study. I'll be focusing on the findings, and I'll try to talk through what I can and not race. So I lead the consultant team with Kittleson and Huddle. They're supporting us. And it's important to note this is a collaboration between DOT, RD, and T2 and MOA traffic, as well as a unique collaboration with Bike Anchorage and the Anchorage Assembly. This is the 3rd time that I'm here presenting to AMATS. The previous 2 presentations focused on the details of a September 2023 pilot and a summer 2024 pilot. As I mentioned, I'll be focusing on the findings, and while brief in what I can bring to you today, we're currently in the process of doing a full report on materials and analysis, and I'm really just going to touch on the highlights to later type of that. Here's a quick view of the extents of the first phase on Pine Street, Carey Street, from DeBar Road to Mountain View Drive. Next slide.
I could certainly comment to my AMATS colleagues.
Go ahead, Steve.
I believe your offer to be a cooperative partner.
Thank you for that. This shows the extents of the phase 2 pilot on West 6th Avenue from Coastal Place. Glad to see this is really interesting for folks. From West 6th Avenue from Coastal Place to A Street, and A Street from 10th Avenue to 6th Avenue. So what it looked like was the next thing. So on Pine Street and McCary Street, out just a tad.
Oh.
Screen. Okay, so you can see in the above image, the existing buffer bike lane on Pine Street before the pilot, and then the parking protected bike lane during the pilot on the lower image. Next slide. Here's a view of what it looked like on A Street. Before, there's no on-street bicycle facilities, and then in the image below, during the pilot, a two-way protected bike lane on the left side of the road, using different materials and including bicycle signals. Pilot was basically in 4 phases. We had the MOA paint and sign shop install, and then we experienced it. People wrote it. We collected data in the form of surveys and other traffic data, and then we removed it. And as I mentioned, we're now in the reporting phase, focused on answering some important questions. One of those questions was, are temporary materials effective for pilots on public roads? Well, we had maybe a rough, rocky start there. On our first phase, we learned a lot, found that those flex posts were actually successful in as a temporary installation, and learned how we could best use those to create a high quality and maintainable, next slide please, whole summer long installation. So a lot more visible striping, clear signage, things like that. So yes, that was what we found. It can be done. Next slide, please. Another important question that we wanted to answer was, did the PBL reduce vehicle speeds? And while we won't have the time to look at all these numbers, on Pine Street and McCary Street, we saw a significant reduction in speed, almost 10 miles per hour on one, or 8 miles per hour in one direction, and a huge increase in the percentage of vehicles adhering to the speed limit, and completely eliminating speeders over 20 miles per hour over the posted speed. On asking the same question of the second phase, it was a lot more nuanced. There were locations or days where we had higher speeds occur in the during condition, but on the whole, we saw no significant change in speeds. That's followed up by the next slide, where there was a question of, did this project increase vehicle travel time? And these two graphs show paint a picture of before in the yellow and after in the green, travel time on 6th Avenue from K Street to A Street in the above graph, and on A Street from 9th to 6th in the below graph. And what you can see highlighted is that the difference in travel time between those, the before condition and this is actually during the pilot and then studied after the pilot, was only 40 and 50 seconds. So a very slight increase in travel time. Next slide. Did the PBL cause cars and trucks to take different routes, diverting from I Street into 6th Avenue to A Street? And the quick answer is, we didn't see a significant change in travel patterns. there's day-to-day fluctuations, but no clear demonstrable data to support that. Here's one of the biggest questions we got was how many people use the protected bike lane? What's shown here is a data output of the radar traffic detection for almost the entire length of the corridor at 6th Avenue and C Street. For the purpose of discussion, detections have been shown to be plus or minus 10% of actual ridership, so indicative of daily ridership trends. And we observed an average of 100 to 130 cyclists using the corridor each weekday. So you can, in the below graph, you can see kind of an average daily profile. If we next slide, that phase 2 average cycling volumes. So if we overlay that 100 to 130 cyclists per day over bike to work day counts, bike to work day, an annual bike commuting event, we can see that it falls in the middle of that annual celebratory ride for on-street facilities throughout Anchorage. So something that is that can be digested in detail more. So
warning.
Okay, was the PBL inherently dangerous? And the quick answer is they're consistent with national studies. The PBL didn't lead to significant crash patterns. There was one cyclist hit on at 9th Avenue and A Street during the pilot that was hit by a red light runner. And so that does occur, but it's not indicative of a statistical pattern or increase in that. So next slide, please. More significant that I'd like to raise to you is a previous red light running trend at 6th Avenue and C Street, where over the 42 months before the pilot, there were 30 red light running collisions on southbound on C Street and 4 eastbound. And the project had this as a huge focus and found that just the discussion focus, temporary materials, we can't say what was the cause, but we saw 0 southbound red light running collisions during the period of our pilot, and saw that as an important shift. Next slide, please. People, one of the biggest things is the discussion from people, and I'm going to have to race through some of these quickly. How effective are pilots at engaging the public?
I think you probably just skip to the end.
Okay. 1,400 interactions with the public over the course of the pilot. There's a narrative slide I just want to touch on. Okay, differing narratives about project outcomes. So people have different views about what happened. Confirmation bias is probably our biggest challenge. And simultaneously, we heard from businesses and riders that there were both less cyclists downtown and more cyclists downtown. We heard from vehicles that they were constantly in queues, but when we look at the video, those queues cleared on the next cycle. So people have real experiences, and we don't want to say that that's not true, but the way those are indicative of the average experience, that's the greatest challenge of this project. So lastly, I'll just give the contact info, and the project does not plan to construct a PBL on 6th Avenue. That's not one of the goals, but one of the biggest outcomes of this project is the interagency conversation on this type of project with pilots and protected bike lanes in general. So there's a lot coming with that. Here's the contact information.
Perfect. And this report with the data is going to be available when?
This month on anchoragepbl.com, and it will be followed by a full-length presentation this month.
Okay, perfect.
Virtually.
And we've got 1 minute. Any other last questions for on the PBL? Okay, perfect. Thanks for coming, Con, and sticking through to give that real quick update. Are there? That finishes up. I guess we are going to push 6D, Fireweed Lane, till next meeting, it sounds like. Are there any committee comments? Any public comments? You've got 30 seconds.
Can I speak as a member?
Let's give Emily a chance and then,
Emily Weiser with Bike Acreage. Just a super quick thank you for the PDL project. It was a huge success, a great partnership, and look forward to more things like that in the future.
okay, perfect. Thank you, Emily. And then, yes, you
Like from that committee, I just want to say the railroad's been an amazing partner in the Fish Creek Trail project. They're the whole reason that we're able to do this. And they're dealing with some pretty significant constraints. So I just want to clarify that point and make sure that that is being stated, that the railroad's been amazing to work with, and we really appreciate their collaboration.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And with that, it is 4 o'clock and we are